know that your power meter could lie to you? Taylor, tell us what that's all about.
Corrupt data is the enemy of the power-based cyclist. You can use tools like Training Peaks and WKO4 to find those bad power spikes, particularly if you're using something like a left-sided power meter. Justin, don't you have a left-sided power meter?
Why, yes I do. And if you have a left-sided power meter, there's a nugget of information you definitely need to know. So watch the show to find out what it is.
Throwing back and forth. Webb has to catch that wheel. How much does he have left in the tank? His heart rate is definitely going up, but this guy can put down some watts. His watts per kilo is fabulous. We are coming into the close of this race. Justin Wagner sitting on the wheel of his rival now. Adam Webb coming around, jumps on the wheel of Adam Boyko. They are starting to ramp it up, but Wagner goes 12.0 watts per kilo. Webb jumps on his tail here. We are seeing exciting stuff happening here as they come to the end here. Big finishes as they lock in here. We see this amazing view. Webb trying to catch on. He is closing the gap on Wagner. Wagner all out. Can he do it? Can he come up to this line? Webb on the tail. He's coming up. Wagner, it looks like he made, yes, and he passes him. Webb takes it from him at the end. Unreal. What an amazing finish. The king dethroned.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. This is What's Up with Power. My name is Justin Wagner with Team ODZ. Got another great show lined up for you today. We have a group ride here going on in Zwift that kicks off in about 90 seconds. So if you want to ride along with us while you're learning, love to have you do that, or just watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, wherever you happen to be. And yeah, today's episode is going to be from Nate Dunn from Data Driven Athlete. I always enjoy having him. So I'm going to send a couple messages here out to the group so they can say, join us Discord. Discord.teamodz.com. There. Discord's the audio chat. Folks can listen in directly there. So if you ever happen to be writing and not able to watch the video, you can just listen to the audio. That works out pretty good. So I'm gonna get my mobile phone. Message here. A bit slow here. I'm gonna pull up the feed on my phone while I'm getting the group settled into a pace. Make this happen. Watch for comments and stuff. Hey, go. Oh wow, there's another group ride that started at the exact same time as we did. I don't think they're going to be going as slow as we will be. Okay. At one point. Okay. Alrighty. That, I think we got group as under control as it can be for being obliterated by a massive group ride of pulling our draft all apart. I'm going to bring Nate on the screen now. Nate, how's it going?
It's going well, Justin. Thanks for having me on again.
Glad to have you. So today we're going to be talking about interpreting your data. You're going to give us a nice high-level overview and drill in a bit on that. Got your slides up. I'm going to slide off the screen. It'll be you running the show, and you just tell me how to run the slides.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Nate Dunn. My coaching company is Data Driven Athlete. I'm in Sacramento, California. I have a 5-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old son, and my wife, and we're kind of hunkering down here. There's a storm that's coming through the Northern California area, so we're anxiously awaiting some dry weather so we can enjoy some more favorable riding conditions. But until then, we're glad to be here. And if you have any questions about any of the content that that we talk about today, you can feel free to type those in the comment box or shoot me an email after the show, and I'd be more than happy to follow up with you. So today we'll be talking about kind of developing some skills and some processes about how to better interpret your data. And we'll go ahead and jump right into the next slide. So you've had a couple other, I think you had Taylor on last week to kind of talk about maybe how to use data to help to form your workouts. And so at the bottom of that level, we kind of think about using data on the bike or kind of through your Garmin or through the Zwift platform or whatever. And that's kind of the feedback that we use to help to guide our rides. And today what we're going to be talking about is kind of moving upstream a little bit from that and talking about how to kind of utilize data in your file review process. So if you're new to using data in your rides and you kind of log into whether or not it's Training Peaks or Garmin Connect or Strava and you see all these squiggly lines, we want to kind of give you some tools to break that down in a more meaningful way. So that will be our focus today. In future presentations, you might hear Justin or some other presenters talk about kind of further downstream metrics, but today we're going to talk specifically about how to develop some skills to better analyze your files. So next slide, please. So the first question that we kind of want to ask when we talk about, looking at your files or reviewing your data is, what is it that you want to see? So it's difficult to kind of know what you're looking for when you open up one of your files if you really have no idea what it is that you're even trying to look at. So the first question we kind of ask ourselves is, what is it that we're wanting to see? And then what's the best way to see it? So we're going to be using some screenshots in this presentation from the WKO4 program, but you can do these same types of things in Training Peaks or Garmin Connect, where essentially you're presented with a lot of different options for how to view your data. And then the best thing to do is to kind of develop some skills to filter that out. So when you're looking for something, you're not having to look at all these distractions or all these different kind of data points that might not be representative of what it is that you're wanting to see. So kind of to further that point, the process that you use to look at your data should really be tied to the workout process or goals. So if you have a specific workout that's targeting something specifically, then your process in terms of how you view data should be aligned with that. So we're going to kind of give a demonstration for what that might look like. So on the next slide, I call this the data blast view. We've established that this might be the the preferred way that Justin Wagner likes to look at his files, where everything is in here, right? We've got every single possible data channel that's been recorded. And if you look at a lot of data, looking at this view might not be too distracting to you, and it might be helpful to kind of point out some trends. But for most of us, when we look at this, this doesn't really give us much information. It's too much distraction. It's too much to even look at. And if we go to the next slide, this is the same file. We've just chosen to hide a lot of those different data channels. So in this view, all we're showing is kind of a smoothed 10-second version of power. You see our heart rate, and then we see the elevation profile of the ride. So this is something that you can do in any software program. So you're not bound to that, kind of default data presentation when you log into that software view. You can customize it, and obviously the more customizable the software is, the more you can kind of shape this view. But it's important, again, to make sure that you're comfortable with how to do that. When you log into Garmin Connect, how do you kind of filter out those views? If it's Training Peaks, if it's any of the other products, how do you filter out all those different ones to give you kind of the bare essentials to make sure it's highlighting what it is that you want to see? So next slide, please. So the first one we're going to start with is kind of a classic interval workout file review. So if you're wanting to kind of dig into your interval workouts and to get some more insight from those, what's the process, or what is a process that you might be able to utilize to do that? So the first thing, again, kind of going back to the previous slide, is to ask, what is our ride objective? What was the purpose of the interval workout? Was it an interval workout that was focusing on trying to increase the time that we're spending near our lactate threshold? Was it an interval workout that was targeting VO2 max, or whatever it was? So we start with this question, and then we say, well, what is it that what does the data tell us about that ride? Were there external factors that might have contributed to the success or failure of that ride? So these are kind of the three different, I'd say, primary pieces that I like to focus on to first start off with what was the objective of this ride or of this workout? What is the data saying? And then were there any extra factors that maybe don't show up in the data, but that might have kind of impacted what the data is that we're seeing? So next slide, please. So for this one, we're going to look at a classic workout that most of you are probably familiar with. The objective of this is to spend about 40 minutes riding near our lactate threshold. And we are wanting to accomplish that goal by executing a classic 2 by 20 minutes at threshold. So this is probably one of the most basic workouts, an effective workout, and it's a fun one to be able to pick apart in a file review, because the data is generally pretty clean and pretty easy to kind of see. So next slide, please. So we've identified what the objective of the ride is, and then we want to, when we dig into this file, when we actually take a look, we want to say, well, was this a success or was it a failure? And then in addition to that, whether or not it was simply a success or a failure, it can also help to kind of acknowledge what was our session RPE. So RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. So the rate of perceived exertion, right, is not going to show up in our data file. It might if we've kind of left notes on that file to remind us, later of how that felt. But it's important to not simply look at what the data is showing us, but if possible, to have made notes on that file to talk about how it felt. Did it feel really easy? Did it feel were we having one of our best days on the bike ever, or was it an absolute slog to try and complete this workout? So if possible, make sure to include those details on your data file. That will help you later as you kind of try and unpack some of the context or some of those external factors that might have contributed to it. So next slide, please. All right, so digging into the actual data. So for this one, again, remember we're doing a classic 2 by 20 workout. Our objective for this ride was to spend about 40 minutes near our lactate threshold. So for this workout, this is one of these workouts that works out, that demonstrates or that displays really, really well. So we can see here, if you can't see on your screen, if you're just kind of listening to this, what we're looking at two intervals that are highlighted. So our two 20-minute intervals that are highlighted. And then below that view, we have a report that's giving us the actual numbers on those intervals. So we can see when we drill down on the data, our first interval was done at 300 watts. Our second interval was done at 301 watts. And both of those were about 103 to 104% over our FTP, right? So in a very short way, because we've kind of eliminated all the rest of this clutter of data, we can immediately identify that this is a workout that was performed, that the objective was achieved in this workout. And in looking at the relationship between power and heart rate, we can also see that this ride was done in a sustainable way, right? This athlete wasn't completely falling off the rails in order to do this ride, to complete this workout. So that kind of leads us to our next piece that we'll look at, is to say, well, this looked like a pretty great day on the bike. This athlete totally knocked this workout out of the park. They felt really good. Their heart rate, pretty much remained in sync with their power output, even into the second interval. This was a good day. So we want to try and learn a little bit more about this. So next slide, please. So this one is the exact same interval workout. It's another way to view the compliance or the success of this workout. So what this is that we have our intervals highlighted at the top of the screen, and then below that we've coded green to show us all the amount of time that we're spending over this rider's FTP. And then it does a really cool thing. It automatically calculates how much time we spent, about 95% over FTP. So it adds that up. It gives us that calculation of about 36, 37 minutes. So again, we can see really clearly that we met the objectives of this ride. We can do that quickly. We can do that efficiently because we've kind of eliminated all the other extra kind of pieces of noise of data. So for me, when I'm reviewing files, I usually have different types of views that I utilize for different objectives of workouts. So if the objective is to kind of focus in on a threshold workout, I have a specific perspective that I use to view threshold workouts. If it's a VO2 max workout, I have a different perspective to look at that. If it's a neuromuscular workout, a different one. So that's something you can do really easily. Well, not easily, but that's something you can do very effectively in WKO4 to give you kind of a different perspective. But even if you're not using that in kind of your process, it helps to say, hey, if I'm looking at this type of workout, maybe I want to view cadence. Maybe I want to view speed. And so I'm going to uncheck those options, or I'm going to check those options to make sure I can see them. Maybe in other workouts, you don't need those extra data points. And so in your mind, you've kind of developed a process to either filter out or add in those data points to give you that the best ability to gain insight from the workout. So next slide, please. So we're still on the same workout, kind of gathering some additional insight. So for this one, we've selected exclusively the second interval from this workout because oftentimes in a 2x20 workout, the second interval really tells us a lot about the overall fitness level of the athlete, because you've already done 20 full minutes right at your FTP, and oftentimes things can kind of come off the rails in that second lap. But we can see here, we've highlighted the second interval, and then we've zoomed in on it on the bottom, and it's probably difficult for you to see on your screen, but what we're looking at is a trend line of power output over the duration of that interval. And we can see that the power output is actually continuing to go up. The trend is going up as we complete the interval. So another piece of insight that shows us that this was a really great day. It might give us an indication about needing to adjust our FTP because we were totally on top of that target, nailing it with apparent ease. But if we're looking at anything, we're seeing that this is a great day. We want to learn more about that workout. So next slide, please. So that kind of segues into this idea of wanting to understand external factors that might have contributed, in this case specifically, to the success of this workout. So what is it? When we look at this workout, and you might do this, you might have one of these workouts where you say, man, I felt incredible today. I don't know what it was, but I'm looking at the data. I can see that I hit some of my best marks. I felt really, really good. I want to kind of understand that more. So if we jump to the next slide, these are a few of those kind of external factors that you might want to go back and take note of on that file. So one of those is training fatigue, and we're going to look at that in an objective sense. But some of these other subjective measures are work stress. Maybe you had finished a new project at work, and you weren't under as much stress, and maybe that's what contributed to an extra good day on the bike. So work stress. Maybe you slept really well. Maybe you did something different with your nutrition. Maybe you had lunch at a different time. Maybe you had higher quality food or more carbohydrate in your lunch, or any of those different types of factors are important to kind of try and add to this puzzle when we're doing a file review, if we're trying to, especially identify a really successful or maybe a ride that was, that was a failure. So looking at the, all the objective pieces of data are important, but then we also, kind of want to grab some of that extra context. So next slide, please. So this shows us kind of some of the context that we're talking about, talking about with fatigue. So this is a view from Training Peaks where you can click on any day and you can see in a very, tight snapshot what the CTL, ATL, and TSB was on those days. So those are, more advanced metrics that Justin will be talking about a little bit later. But this gives you an idea of some additional pieces that give us context on that file. So next slide, please. So how about race file? So similar type process where we want to, first we want to start with, what was our race objective? What was the, was this a race that we were maybe supporting somebody else? Was this a race that we were looking to, to get a result for ourselves? So we start with that race objective, and then we dig in a little bit more in depth, and we say, well, what story does the data tell us about that race? And then the third one is, did my training prepare me for the race demands? And we'll kind of look at that as we jump into one of these files. And then again, same as our workout file, what were some of the external factors that might have influenced the success or failure of that workout? So next slide, please. So this is a race file from one of our coaches, Sam Bassetti, from a race that he did a couple years ago. And this is a different perspective maybe than what you've seen, but it's a really important one to kind of talk about race demands. So in this file specifically, there was a key climb kind of at the 4-hour mark of this race. And so what Sam did leading up to that 4 hours of a race is that he, it's 91 miles, 2,500 kilojoules is the amount of work that he did before he hit this kind of keystone climb in this race file. So this is just an example of kind of looking at a race file and saying, first of all, did my training help to prepare me for this race? So have I been doing the types of workouts, or have I been doing the types of rides where I've been doing, peak max level efforts in a fatigue state or on fatigue legs? And in this case, this is one of those files where you can see that Sam's preparation and his training helped to enable him to achieve a new peak 5-minute power, even on fatigued legs, even with 2,500 kilojoules in his legs. So this is just a specific example of a specific race and what his objectives were in that race and how those lined up to his training demands. But you could kind of undergo this process in any number of race files that you might look at. Maybe you've been working specifically on your anaerobic capacity or your neuromuscular or your sprint power, and so you're looking at a criterion and you're wanting to see whether or not you were able to produce peak sprint values towards the finish of that crit. So your process in looking at this might be to say, hey, I can see that I'm not able to produce peak sprint power, and so my training has not prepared me for the demands of a race. And the race file and kind of analyzing that race file might give you that insight. It might help you kind of reach some of those conclusions. So it really depends on what the purpose of the race was, and what type of race it was in terms of the type of insight that you're hoping to glean from it. So it's really specific to kind of what your overall objective is, just like it is with our workout review. So you start first with what you're wanting to look at, clean out that view in order to eliminate all the extra data channels that might not be specific or helpful in terms of what you're looking at, and then begin to dig in to try and find some insights. Next slide, please. So again, there's kind of different layers of understanding data. And the first one being, what Taylor talked about is how to use data to help to influence your rides. And for this one, what I would kind of leave you with, is the importance of developing your own process. The process that I use to look at workout files might not be a process that's helpful to you. You might have a different software that you use, or you might have different things that you're working on at the time or that you find most interesting. But whatever it is, I would encourage you to not just go with the default perspective in whatever software that you're using. Experiment with how to kind of eliminate different data channels, to focus in on things. How do you zoom in on an interval workout? How do you do different things to make sure you have the skill set see what it is that you're wanting to see, so you can then tie that insight and that analysis directly to your training and and what you're doing on the bike. So we'll go to the next slide. If you have any extra questions, you can let those fly in the Facebook box. Even if it's not related to this presentation, if you have any other general training questions, you can feel free to let those go. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nate. Now, I want to just say thank you so much for all your time, and we really appreciate your perspective. We will be on for another 10 minutes here, so if you guys have questions, like you said, let them fly, and I'll be working on my filibuster while you guys are generating your questions. First filibuster announcement here, we have Team ODZ is actually organizing outdoor race. Believe it or not, we do get off our trainers every now and then, and yes, that's the purpose of the trainer. And so it's called the Liberty Road Race. It's going to be in Spangle, Washington. If you're near the area, it'll actually be the State Road Race Championships, or WSBA region. So that's something you're interested in, check it out. We've got the Facebook event follow for updates on that. Should be a good day of racing on a course that's been used before, but it's been dormant for a couple of years. So we're breathing some life back into that course. And I found out that when you're the race director, you don't get to race normally, unfortunately. So I won't be able to race it, but keeping racing going is a worthwhile venture. So that's why So I think Nate's going to come up and race it, right, Nate?
Yeah, I don't know. Is it dry and sunny and?
It's July 28th, so
okay. It
probably actually would be a good escape from the super warm temperatures down there at that time.
Yeah, July 28 can be a brutal time here in Sacramento. 100 plus on the pavement, and
it might be 60 degrees here by then. Kidding, it'll probably be more than that.
That sounds that sounds much more comfortable. But Justin, I had one extra thought, kind of going back to some of the content.
Yep.
And that was to really encourage you to not just get in the habit of looking at your data and interpreting it, but trying to understand why is it that you're seeing what you're seeing. And I think the value in that is kind of, again, always connecting the process that you use to analyze your data to the factors that contributed to that. So was that a lack of preparation on your part? Did you progress too quickly in your training plan progression to where maybe you missed some steps along the way, and that's why you're failing in a workout? But always trying to kind of connect back, not just looking at your data and saying, well, that's interesting, that's what I'm seeing, but to say, well, why is that the case? Was there something from the nutrition side that I'm missing? Something from the hydration side? Did I have extra coffee? Did I not have coffee? The more that you can kind of dig into answering that why question will help you make much stronger connections between not just kind of the fun of sitting down and looking at your data, but of drawing those parallels to what you're doing in training, and then making better decisions kind of going forward. So not just looking at your data, but trying to answer the question of why it is that you're seeing what you're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that I always find interesting along the same lines is I'm constantly looking to understand how the data describes how I'm feeling, right? Because the end all be all is your body's got to feel like it's doing good. You got to feel like the workouts are progressing or increasing. The numbers might show that, the numbers might not. Sometimes you might have to ignore the numbers if your body's telling you not so good. But anyway, so that's kind of something as you're saying that, I was thinking, maybe you start to feel a little sick and you're like, okay, what is it that maybe got me here? Is it because I have kids and they came home from school? Or is it because I pushed myself too much on training, which could be the case as well.
Yeah, and kind of further to that point too, it's important, to also know that sometimes you're going to look at a file and you're going to be like, I don't know. I did everything right. I ate, I slept well. I don't have a lot of stress. Everything's perfect in my life. And I was terrible in the workout. I mean, so that's a skill in and of itself, to be able to not overinvest yourself in looking at your data and, poring over all these details, to be able to click on a file and be able to say, nope, everything was good. It was just a bad day, and then move on. Right. So, you'll talk about that in future presentations, but that's kind of the trend analysis that's important, to say, we're not looking we're not looking for perfection in every single workout and every single interval. It's just not possible. What we're looking for is general trends of improvement and progression. And oftentimes what that means is failed workouts, see if there's something to be learned there, and then move on if there's not. And that's, I've worked with athletes that's a really difficult skill for them, to not get bound up in, why am I failing? Why is this workout not good? And it can be such a kind of anchor to them, spending too much time and energy focusing on a bad workout. So another additional skill to work on is develop a quick process to look at your files, look at your data, and then if there's nothing to be learned there, or maybe in the moment there's nothing to be learned there, move on and head to the next day.
Absolutely. And we have a question pending, but I have one just thought on that is, your motivation and what keeps you interested for that workout can be huge. So either, like for me, sometimes it's just getting in the right mindset. If I know I'm going to have a brutal VO2 max workout, I want to know like 24 hours in advance at least, right?
Sure.
I want to prepare myself, get prepped for it. And apart from that, also, I think a lot of what enables our high trainer usage is connection with people while we're on Zwift. And for me, that's huge. Like, we joke and say, if I came out to train and like Zwift was gone, I couldn't connect with anyone, and I didn't have Discord, I wouldn't train. Like, yeah, because I'm not just going to stare at a wall and push out watts for intervals. Like, I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
So those are a couple things that can be huge, right? You have that, whatever that is that motivates you, is it there? And that can help you make the difference between a bad day on the bike or a good day. Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the question we have on Facebook from William Youngman. He says, watts versus torque. Is there value at looking/training with both, or is it just watts?
Yeah, so I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the PowerTap hub is the only one that gives us actual torque values. I think all the other ones are derived torque values. So there certainly are, some cases to be made that torque can be an interesting metric to look at, especially for kind of sprint power and other types of I'd say other types of disciplines where generating torque in a quick fashion, either in a track race or that kind of stuff, can be of interest. I'll be honest with you, I've never used torque with my athletes, and if that is primarily it's because there's not a lot of power meters that give us an actual torque value. So there might be a coach that could make a really good case for why torque is valuable. I'm not that coach, so I don't have a lot of knowledge about how to utilize torque. It's not something that I've used. So I would claim kind of ignorance on that topic, and that, if there is somebody out there that has found a way to utilize that to really help, kind of inform their training, I haven't read it or haven't been exposed to it.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of that also goes down to where people are thinking of like super low cadence grinding stuff, right? Like go slog it at 40 RPM for FTP intervals or something, right?
Yeah.
Develop that
sure.
torque. And I think there's even there's a whole, I think Training Racing with the Power Meter book actually even goes into whether or not there's even like documented improvement to be made for your typical road racer, because it is working torque more, but not necessarily as much as like weightlifting. Am I on the right?
Yeah. So what Training Racing with Power Meter, and this gets to a larger debate in the cycling training world, but basically what they say is that those peak torque values are ones that are only ever reached really in like a standing start. So in a track race where you're starting from your standing start and you're generating, a lot of torque to get up to speed, that's really the only time when those high torque values are really seen in a race, or in a cycling context. And they make the case that because of that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time kind of grinding away at low cadences or high torque, because those efforts aren't specific to most cycling contexts. So that's one argument that's made. The counter argument to that is that perhaps there are unique training adaptations that can be had by doing specific types of low cadence work in the 40 to 50 range, and that there are, in essence, it's strength training on the bike, that it's it's improving your strength in a unique way that helps to kind of build a foundation for which to make further cycling gains. So my personal opinion is that I've never seen any evidence that that's the case, but there's also some athletes that like those workouts, and those workouts give them a feeling of confidence and of a variety in their training. And there's a strong potential that there's a placebo effect there, that it really feels like, burning in your muscles and kind of, training your pedal stroke in a really slow way, that maybe that kind of contributes in a unique way. So where I settle on that is I would err on the side of, generally I'd err on the side of specificity, and that if you're not doing races that are demanding you to be hammering along at 50 RPMs or whatever, that your time would probably be better spent, at cadences and at power outputs that are specific to the demands that you're wanting to do. But if that's something that you're interested in, and you're like, hey, I've read about this and I really want to try it, then my approach would be, okay, let's try it, right? Let's try it, and then let's test it. Let's see if you do some low cadence workouts, specifically targeted for four weeks or whatever. Let's do it, and then let's see what results you might get from that. So that's kind of the spectrum of the debate. Some people, I think, find value in that low cadence type effort. Others maybe not so much, but whatever you do, test it, see for yourself if you feel like it's effective.
Yeah, so this may be exactly that placebo effect you're talking about, but sometimes we'll get on a climb where you are absolutely gear limited, right? And you have to get into a super low cadence, and it will absolutely drain you faster. And most people cannot sustain the same wattages at lower cadences. They just tire faster. So from that perspective, at least the mental training of, I've done these intervals, I've practiced them, I've pushed to where, okay, I feel like I can sustain it longer. I'm not tiring as fast maybe, and you just mentally preparing for that climb where you're going to have to be slogging it out. I think there's value in that. It's mental preparation for maybe a specific race objective is going to happen. Just kind of practicing what you're gonna race. If you have that in a race.
Yeah, in that context, I think that's beyond the placebo effect. That's that's training specificity. So if you're oftentimes finding that you're in races, or you have rides where you have really low cadence where you're kind of grinding along, then there's a definite case to be made that you should be incorporating that type of training to help prepare you for that. And I've been in that context where I've been on climbs that are so, that demand, 40, 50 RPMs, and I completely fall apart. And admittedly, part of that is because I never do any of that type of training, right? So I don't do that type of training because I very rarely come across those climbs. But if I lived in an area that oftentimes had that, those types of steep gradients, or if I was racing over those, then I would definitely have that, have that be part of my training, because I know that I would be encountering it, in a competitive situation.
Okay, well, we've gone over our time. Thank you, Nate, for your expertise, your time. Appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, you can find Nate's content at datadrivenathlete.com. If you've got specific show questions, you can email them to us at WUWP@teamodz.com. We also have a forum where all this gets posted and people chat. That's discuss.endurancelab.fit. Hopefully somebody can post that in the comments. I don't have that URL in the stream, but we're here every week, this same time slot. Coming up though, May and June this year, we're gonna have a slight hiatus as I'm gonna be away for a bit of cycling events, and there's just enough on and off during those months that we're excited to put things on pause, and then we'll resume in July. So just be aware of that. If you need to get your fix of what's up with power learning, we do have plenty of YouTube recorded content to hold you over for those 2 months. Don't worry. There's like 24 hours of content. I don't think you'll be bored. So
you'd be bored. You'd definitely be bored. Content to watch.
Valid point. You won't run out of content. Let's put it that way, huh, Nate?
Yeah.
So cool. And last reminder here, if the Liberty Road Race in July, end of July, we're putting on. If you are anywhere near Idaho, Oregon, Washington, looking for a good race, love to have you out. Check it out. Liberty Road Race, July 28th. So with that, we'll say thank you all for coming, and hope you all have a wonderful day.